Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Fray, bringing you my first audio commentary for WCReplays.com. This audio is copyright 2006 WCReplays.com, so if you sell it on the street for drug money, we're going to come after you. This replay today is going to be... actually, I'm going to do two replays because this one is short. I'm also going to do one of my own. The first replay, however, the pro one, is going to be 4K Todd has big nose, which is actually Philbot. And that's not very nice, Philbot, even if it's true. And his opponent is going to be a human player, I think a pretty high-ranking ladder player, most likely from Northrend, Sira X. We're going to get this game paused at the 2-minute mark. 1x speed, Fog of War on for my case, but if you want to turn it off, that's no big deal. I'll give you a little introduction of the game while y'all are getting that ready. Philbot is, for those of you not familiar with him, is very famous for always going fiends. And a lot of people criticize him for being uncreative because he has always built fiends for pretty much as long as anyone has ever seen him in his pro career. However, I think he's a little bit more innovative than people give credit because it takes a great deal of subtle flexibility to get the same fiend strategy to work in every possible situation. And he does a lot of interesting things that I've seen, you know, over the year or so that I've been watching replays to adapt. You know, I've seen him add in Banshees to deal with Panda Fire. Anyway, in this game, we're going to see him turning his fiend build into a harass, which is not what is usually done. I'll go into a little bit more detail about that in a minute. Let's go ahead and get this sucker started. I'm going to give you all 2 seconds. You better have your finger on the pause button, or you're going to get left behind. Ready? 2, 1, unpause. Hope you could handle that. All right. Usually what you want to do with Fiend build is go creeping, because Fiend, Death Knight, and Rod of Necromancy is a pretty fast creep, and it's also a good way if you get your Death Knight up to level 3 for that level 2 coil, and as soon as you do that, you pop out a Lich, and you go get him to level 3 for level 2 Nova. You also get an Orb of Corruption on the Lich, and then with all the focus fire from the Fiends, the armor debuff from the Orb of Corruption, and your nuke, you have the ability to kill even a very high HP unit very quickly. That doesn't work too well against humans these days because most human players have learned that their greatest strength is the ability to expand all over the freaking place really fast using rush-built buildings. And if you are trying the Fiend build and doing the creep thing, it doesn't work too well because it gives him too much opportunity to expand. So here's what Philbot did. He sent his first Fiend scouting. You can see it in the south part of the map right now. He sent his Death Knight to the middle so he can get to wherever he finds the human to be as quickly as possible. The reason for this, you scout with the Fiend because with the Fiend build, gold and lumber and all are very tight, so you can't afford the supply for an extra Acolyte, to go scouting, and you also can't afford to send a ghoul away because you only have 2 of them with which to get lumber. Alright, let's go to Sira's base, and we're going to watch the harass as it progresses. First thing Phil's going to do is chop a peon down till it's under 100 health and coil it. That's just a pretty common technique that you use to pick off peasants, and that's his goal right now. Now his Fiend has arrived, and here's the nice thing about using Fiends to hit human peons. Militia have heavy armor. Normally, peasants are going to have medium armor, which means they take reduced damage from the piercing. And when they turn into militia... okay, here comes Sira's army. And Philbot gets the hell out of there, which is a very good idea because, especially this early on, when you only have 3 of them, you want to avoid squaring off with your Fiends against his footmen. For the most part, if you dance well, you won't get completely owned or anything like that. But you will probably take a lot of damage on the Fiends, and if your opponent can micro, you're probably not going to kill a whole lot of footmen. That changes a little bit later on when you have more Fiends and you also have your Lich to nuke. So anyway, he ran away, which was a good idea. I think he's going to go check the expansion in the upper right-hand corner to see if that is where this guy was creeping. Turns out it's not, although I don't think... Yeah, he never even quite sees that. More importantly, he's going back for more harass. As I was saying, militia turn into having heavy armor, which means they take full damage from the fiends, and consequently, call to arms, instead of helping defend your base, almost ends up being something of a dinner bell for the fiends to come kill a whole bunch of peons. Peasants. Okay. So, I mean, at this point, he's already killed, just to give you an idea of how effective this harass is, I think he's killed 4, I think this is, and maybe actually 5 human peasants at this point. That's pretty much enough to preempt any possibility of expanding from this guy. Alright, this is important. Philbot's fiends got cornered there by the footmen, and he pretty much immediately teleported out once he could see that they weren't going to have anywhere to run to. That's real important, because when you're using fiends against footmen, and the same thing actually applies to grunts, you need to take as little damage on the fiends as possible. You might be able to keep them alive with coil for a little while and sit there and maybe get 1 peon kill, but you're going to basically waste too much mana, and you're going to end up with a bunch of wounded fiends that you can't do anything with. He's creeping here. That's because, well, for one thing, his harassment has pretty much done its job at this point. It's killed a whole lot of peons. And this camp will also give him level 3. If he finished it, but he doesn't, he gets creep jacked. Here's important. His Death Knight's going to run off to the right, his fiends run off to the left. Basically, the footman kind of came in sort of in the middle of his army. And while you obviously want to keep your hero with the rest of your army, it is a big no-no to ever run your fiends or your Death Knight, for that matter, through your opponent's footman. If you do that, you're going to take a ton of damage. You're also likely to get bolt surrounded. So don't do it. And a lot of times the only way to avoid doing that is to actually send part of your army one way and part of your army another. So that was a very important move by Philbot that I hope you learned something from. Let's talk unit balance at this point. Philbot's got 7 fiends, which is a little bit more than one would typically build. Usually people get about 5 fiends and then add destroyers or abominations or something like that. For one thing, though, fiends end up being a good soft counter for casters, and they help you survive until the destroyers come out. So if you get like 7 as opposed to 5, it lets you focus down sorceresses and priests a little bit quicker. You also need them to kill footmen. That there, he split his Death Knight off again from the fiends when he was running away. I think that was to get his Death Knight out of bolt range as quickly as possible. And I was saying about the fiend numbers, if you want to have any hope of really killing footmen and standing off against them, you're going to need a few extra ones, just because you've got the wrong damage type working against you, and they're going to be taking reduced damage from the defend. So it helps to have just a larger army. Notice that if you take the Fog of War off, let's take a look at everything. Sira only has like a 32 supply army. That's the sort of thing that happens to you when you lose 6 peasants in a harass early on, which, you know, Philbot did without too much trouble. In the upcoming battle, you're going to see an example of why I say fiends end up being a pretty good soft counter for casters. You're going to see the sorceresses are going to get focused down, and they're going to end up having to run away, only to get picked off by some more fiends. You're also going to see the combination of Nova and fiends are going to just kill a hell of a lot of militia again, and put Sira even further behind. Phil loses his Death Knight here, which is obviously a mistake, but like I said, with the fiends dealing so much damage to the militia, he really he comes out okay despite this. I guess you could say it was a mistake, maybe a sacrifice. Alright, here we're going to see how the fiends soft counter the casters. He immediately focuses on the sorceresses, smartly not really chasing all the way through Sira's army, but he's got him wounded, and he's got a fiend coming up from behind that's going to pick him off. Burrow is obviously if Burrow, when you hit tier 2 with undead and you're going fiends, Burrow is absolutely the first thing you want to research, and you also need to get really good at microing it. I see a lot of people on the forums talking about how they go fiends because, for example, they have 200 ping and they're like under the impression that fiends require less micro. That's really not true. You have to be incredibly fast with burrow, and if you're not, and if you blow off the micro aspect of the game, you're not going to get very good. So, just remember to learn how to micro your fiends. Here, you know how I mentioned getting level 3 on both the DK and Lich is one of your prime objectives with this strategy, and that's what Philbot's doing right now. He just brought his Lich over, and he's taking out some creeps with him so he can get that level 2 Nova. Balancing your hero levels it's very important for Undead when you go for the Death Knight Lich combo. Okay, let's see. Take a look at the supplies again. Sira is still at like 36, and he's got his lumber production back for the most part. Okay, Philbot's going to do something stupid here. You see this in his base. He sees a lone sorceress with his Death Knight, and he goes chasing after it. Sorceresses really don't run around by themselves. They're generally accompanied by the rest of the human army, which will bolt surround you, and down goes Phil's hero again. I have the feeling he probably wasn't thinking too hard because he knows he's already got this one won, but that wasn't too good. So, be a little bit more careful than that. Just realize that, humans with like the Death Knight really do have a pretty strong capability to pick off your heroes. He's getting destroyers now. This game's really pretty much over. In fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and cut it short. There's really not going to be anything to learn from the last battle in this because it's like a 58 supply undead army against like a 40 supply human one, and you know who's going to win that. So, let's go ahead and get on to the next replay. I'm going to quit out of this, and I'm going to start up the other replay, which should be in the folder. This one is one of mine, so needless to say, the quality of the play is not nearly as high. I'm level 30 on Azeroth. I'm really not the best player out there. I'm going to talk a little bit about the game and give you all a second to get it loaded. We're also going to pause this one on the 2-minute mark from my point of view. Alright, while we're getting that one started up, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little recap of the important points from the previous game. First one is, if you're going to go fiends against human, it's a good idea to do a peon harass with them instead of... Why do I always call them peons? They're peasants. When I say peon, I just mean just any worker unit. I'm sure y'all figured that out by now. Anyhow, most people actually go ghouls against human. Most people consider that a better idea. You can creep with the ghouls, and you can harass with the Death Knight, and you end up having a little bit more mobility with your army from the ability to split it off like that. With fiends, you generally have to keep your army together, and that's not quite as conducive to containing somebody that is likely to try to expand a whole lot. So, if you're going to use fiends, it might be a good idea to adopt that into a harassment strategy. The second important thing was to micro very carefully with your fiends in the early game. If you get in you don't want to get them in a situation where they're going to take a lot of damage from footmen. Fiends are really expensive, and there's nothing in the human army at that point in the game that is worth killing if you have to sacrifice a fiend to do it. And you also just don't want to take a lot of damage because you'll waste all your mana on your Death Knight, and you won't have any coils for healing fiends later on. You won't have it for picking off peons, and you just in general won't have as much fun. And the last thing was to never, ever, ever run your army through your opponent's army when you're dealing with like fiends against footmen or fiends against grunts or something like that. It's better to split your army apart if you have to, and then reunite them a little bit later, generally in your base as you're retreating. Okay, so we got this next replay of Fray versus Mr. Coupeau. You're going to get that pause at the 2-minute mark, 1x speed, Fog of War.